All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about something pretty amazing. How we taught computers to actually see. I don't just mean process pixels, I mean really understand what's inside an image. You know when you or I look at a picture like this one? Our brain just gets it, instantly. We see a hill, some trees, the sky. It's totally effortless for us. But what does a computer see? That's a whole different story. And that, right there, is the huge fundamental challenge of computer vision. How in the world do you teach a machine to look at a bunch of raw numbers, just pixels, and see something meaningful, like a hill? So to really get how we solved this, we've got to put ourselves in the computer's shoes, so to speak. We need to understand what it's actually looking at. See, for a machine, there are no objects. There's zero context. An image is just a giant grid of numbers. That's it. Every single pixel is just a value that says, hey, I'm this bright and this color. And that's all the computer has to go on. Okay, so how did the early pioneers try to crack this nut? Well, their first approach was actually pretty logical, made a lot of sense on paper. But, as we're about to see, it was deeply flawed. The idea was basically this. Let's program the computer with rules. If you want it to find a face, you literally sit down and write code that says, an eye is a circle-ish thing, a nose is kind of triangular, and a mouth is a line underneath. You had to handcraft every single rule for every single feature. But this whole approach, it was incredibly brittle. I mean, just change the lighting a little bit, or tilt the head at a slightly different angle, and the whole system would just break. It couldn't handle the beautiful messiness of the real world. So, yeah, there had to be a better way. And that brings us to the big breakthrough, the real game changer, the convolutional neural network, or CNN for short. The shift here was massive. It was a complete change in philosophy. Forget programming the rules. Instead, let's have the machine learn from looking at tons of examples. So instead of telling the computer how to see, the idea was to just show it things. We'd feed it thousands, even millions of pictures of, say, cats, and just let it figure out for itself what a cat looks like. That is the absolute core of modern learning-based computer vision. Okay, so you might be thinking, why not just use a regular, standard neural network for this? Just dump all the pixels in, right? Well, it's not that simple. Images have a very specific kind of problem that standard networks just aren't built for. Let's look at a super simple example to see what I mean. Let's take this tiny little image of an O. It's just 6 by 6 pixels. Now, to a standard neural network, this isn't a circle. It's just a flat list of 36 numbers, a sequence of ones and zeros. All the shape, all the structure, it's just gone. What the network does is it takes that nice 2D grid of pixels and just flattens it. It turns it into one long single line of data. And when it does that, it throws away the most important piece of information. Which pixels are next to which other pixels? The spatial relationship, the actual shape, is completely destroyed. And here's where it really falls apart. Watch this. If that O just shifts over by one single pixel, something that to us is totally meaningless, it's still an O. The list of numbers that gets fed into the network is now completely different. The network thinks it's looking at a brand new, totally unrelated image. So yeah, not very robust. So this whole flattening thing is basically a dead end for images. Not only is it crazy inefficient, I mean, for a real photo, the number of connections would be astronomical, but more importantly, it's totally blind to the one thing that actually matters in an image, its structure, the way pixels are arranged. And this is where the genius of the convolutional neural network really shines. The CNN was designed from the ground up to solve exactly these problems. So, instead of trying to swallow the whole image in one gulp, a CNN works differently. It uses these things called filters, or kernels. You can think of them like tiny little magnifying glasses, and each one is a specialist. It's trained to look for one very specific simple pattern. Like maybe one filter is an expert at finding vertical edges, and another one is a pro at finding gentle curves. And here's the core idea. You take one of these specialist filters and you slide it across the entire image. It methodically scans every little patch, looking for a match to the one tiny pattern it knows how to find. And as it slides and checks each spot, it creates a new image. We call this a feature map. And really, it's just a map that lights up in the spots where the filter found its pattern. It shows you where in the original image those vertical lines or curves were. Now, this is the really clever part. It's called parameter sharing. Just think about it for a second.
Instead of having to learn what a vertical line looks like in the top left corner and then learn it all over again for the bottom right corner, the network just learns one single vertical line detector, and it reuses or shares that same detector across the whole image. This is what makes CNN so unbelievably powerful and efficient.
So with this one elegant idea, it solves all the problems we had before. You get a system that automatically learns the important features, that preserves the image's structure, and that's robust when things shift around. It can handle the real world. But it gets even better, because you can stack these layers. The first layer might learn to see simple stuff, like edges and colors. But then the next layer takes those feature maps and learns to combine them into more complex shapes, like corners or circles. And the next layer combines those to see parts of things, like an eye or a nose or a car's wheel. It builds up understanding, from simple pixels to whole objects. It's this incredible hierarchy of vision, kind of like how our own brains work. And this technology is everywhere now, from medical scans that can spot diseases earlier than a human doctor to the self-driving cars navigating our streets. It's completely changing our world, which leads to a fascinating final thought. If these machines can learn to see all the patterns we've taught them, what might they one day be able to recognize that we as humans can't? Thanks for joining me for this explainer.